This week, I'm experiencing a little Inman Connect FOMO. Keller Williams settled the Batton lawsuit for $20 million. If you don't know about this lawsuit, it's an interesting one, having overlap with Sitzer Burnett. Compass's Reffkin proposed a nationwide MLS. Brown Harris Stevens CEO Bess Freeman is raising concerns over private listings eroding consumer trust and creating fair housing implications. Finally, we're going to talk about the One Big Beautiful Bill and all the new rules that take effect in 2026. Welcome back to The Clean Close. Okay, so first, Keller Williams settled the Batton lawsuit. The Batton lawsuit was a lawsuit brought by home buyers. So if you recall, in Sitzer Burnett, the claim was that sellers felt that they were overpaying in commission because buyer agency fees were pre-negotiated and written into their listing contract. The Batton lawsuit was kind of the opposite of that. The Batton lawsuit was home buyers saying that they were artificially paying inflated commissions because the list price included their commission payment. So Batton's basically saying home buyers were harmed because buyer agent commissions were artificially inflated by the existing listing system. And the legal theory was even though sellers technically paid the buyer agent, the cost was baked into home prices and buyers ultimately paid for it anyway. So Batton complicated things because 4 out of the 5 complainants were also covered in the Sitzer Burnett case. So it lost its class action status. But Keller Williams decided to settle anyway. And Keller Williams said they decided to settle because they wanted to bring certainty and allow everyone at KW to focus on their mission without distractions. That's a quote from the Inman News article I'll put a link to in the show notes. This is useful and interesting. First of all, I feel like our industry is experiencing a little bit of lawsuit fatigue. And I think that I think they've given up the fight on this, almost jumped the shark in a way. And even though I'm sure there will continue to be lawsuits against our industry, hopefully if NAR decides to not hold as much money in its big bank account, we can become less of a target for future lawsuits. So, there have been arguments about how commissions are paid. What I really can't figure out is if these contracts are written by the lawyers, which they are in every state, why they are so porous and so vulnerable to these types of consumer lawsuits. And if you remember a few months ago, I did a podcast where we talked about the actual amount that each of the Sitzer Burnett claimants were going to get, and it was like $16. So who really wins in these class action lawsuits is the attorneys. So, I hope that consumers are kind of seeing the light. And, if you are a consumer and you're watching, or even if you're an agent and you're watching, making sure that your clients understand that agents don't work for free, nor should we, that all commissions are negotiable, that these contracts are binding and clearly state who pays for what. Hopefully we can avoid some lawsuits in the future. So this one is just something that happened this week that I feel like we need to put a button in, and hopefully more of these lawsuits are just going to disappear in front of our face. Story number 2. Okay, this one is really fun. So Reffkin floats a national MLS. This is something he introduced on the Inman stage, and his point is basically that brokers and agents should come together to make a unified MLS system owned by the industry rather than a patchwork of local MLS organizations and associations. And it should have an independent board. Our industry, I think since I got my license, has been begging for a national MLS. This comes up at almost every Inman Connect. It comes up all the time when you are bringing a bunch of industry people together. The MLS organizations have confronted this demand from agents, but you realize that the MLS is structured in a way that has more supposed local control. But in ignoring the demand for a nationwide MLS, not only did NAR sell off Realtor.com, which would have been the natural place for it, but also made way for portals like Zillow to kind of create a nationwide MLS, except that there is a major conflict of interest. I mean, this is just the obvious thing. So what I find really interesting in this moment is that with Compass and the Anywhere merger taking over so much control, it's almost like you can see change happening so fast and so independently. It doesn't require a board. It doesn't require NAR or like a group vote or any of these committees or anything. Like they can literally just be like, we're going to do this. And all of a sudden it becomes like a real thing, which I think is interesting, kind of dangerous. But, you know, we've been talking about a one nation MLS for a very long time. Last podcast, I proposed a state-by-state MLS. The only thing that's a little funky about a nationwide MLS is that different states have different rules related to, you know, real estate. How much that affects MLS entry, maybe not so much. But I think that if the MLSs were owned truly by the brokerages and the agents, they would at least fundamentally understand what it is our job is. And this has been one of the biggest problems with MLSs being supposedly owned by local associations, but really owned by whoever really operated by whoever the CEO is. And if the CEO, like one time I was asked to come into the MLS to give my feedback about, you know, a new app they were creating. And they had these young people who clearly were not in the real estate industry asking established brokers like what they do in a day and how they actually use apps. And I was taken aback by the lack of awareness of the MLS about the actual day-to-day job. But in thinking about it, I'm like, well, it makes sense then that they have these policies that are like you have to enter a listing the day after signing, when if you are in the real estate industry, you know that you meet sellers sometimes months before you actually list anything, and you need a delay in order to prep the house for sale until photos are ready and brochures and all that thing. So the idea that you're signing a listing agreement and then immediately putting it into the MLS already on its face doesn't look right. Then they had to create another form for that so that we could delay the entry, you know, and it's been a constant source of frustration for agents that the MLS seems to be given more and more power under new NAR rules. And yet they're the ones who are the least vested in the actual day-to-day efficiency of our industry. So, you know, I gotta say, like, if he can make this happen, I think that would be incredible. And, you know, I definitely think what I'm feeling about it is that there is this major industry shift. It's almost like there's a mutiny that's quietly, but maybe not so quietly anymore, kind of brewing. You know, where people are just fed up with having to beg for changes that will keep us operating with the least amount of frustration. So again, unless you're married to a real estate agent or your mom was a real estate agent, you really don't know as a buyer or a seller how much work we have to do in order to get a listing ready for the market, or to even like aggregate our data. If we have actual brokers and agents creating a nationwide MLS, maybe that would change some of the IDX licensing like we talked about on the last episode. Maybe agents would get a little bit of that licensing money instead of it going to the MLS. Maybe the fees would go down. I mean, it's pretty insane to me, even right now, as I sit here, the amount of education that you need in order to get your license is like a few online classes, and then you have to pass a test. But the amount of education you actually need in order to do the job is like way more extensive and requires so much more in-depth training, code of ethics training, and, you know, just how to actually do the job of being a real estate agent, really reading the contracts, understanding the concepts and all of that. It takes so much more time. I don't know why that isn't part of the education we have already. But that's just the basis of doing the job, let alone having to navigate all of the different systems that we're supposed to, you know, utilize and become members of. So, you know, even running a brokerage, you see a lot of people who want to come and they're new licensees and they love the branding and they're like, I want to jump in. And then, you know, you train them and they realize they just don't really want to do real estate as a job, but they want to keep their license. Like the MLSs and the associations make money even off the people who aren't actually working. And I think a lot of the structure of that third party making money off of the process, whether it's through IDX fees or mandatory subscriptions, it could be eliminated if brokers and agents were actually steering the ship. I love this idea, and I also think where it could save us some money too is that a lot of agents are licensed in multiple states. Like I'm licensed in Florida, I'm licensed in California. You know, I would be able to utilize one MLS platform and connect my, Real Scout account and other different tech tools to just one platform instead of having to belong to two MLSs in Florida. I think we have 3 or 4 in California, and it's expensive. It's expensive to belong to all of these different associations. So I'm kind of loving it, I gotta say. And if he can do it, he can do it. NAR couldn't do it. He can do it. I'm like, more power to you. I'm not always on the same side as Reffkin. I think that a lot of the private listing stuff is kind of propaganda that's self-serving. Dual agency, obviously follow the money. You see who it benefits. James Dwiggins just posted something on LinkedIn today. It says, Dorify MLS recently deployed Sightline, our MLS analytics tool that combines listing data with Real Report's corpus of public record and sales data to measure on versus off-market outcomes. And the data speaks for itself. Homes marketed through the MLS sold for 13.4% more, approximately $51,000. I don't know where that number is coming from. In total, off-market listings cost, this is, I guess, North Carolina based, cost home sellers more than $406 million in lost value just last year. Drilling down further across 16 counties and more than 80 cities, on MLS listings outperformed off MLS sales in nearly every area, some eclipsing 6-figure deltas. So that is useful when figuring out the private listings thing. So in sum, I feel like Compass is still a double-edged sword. I love that they can affect big change. And I think Reffkin's obviously a thinker, a leader in so many ways. I mean, people just drink that Kool-Aid left and right. But also, the idea of private listings becoming the norm or standard, I think is very, very dangerous. And to that point, we move on to Brown Harris Stevens. So Brown Harris Stevens CEO Bess Friedman is basically saying what a lot of people in the industry are thinking, but not a lot of CEOs are saying, which is that private listing networks diminish trust, and concerns around fair housing could ultimately become lawsuits if we aren't careful about how the industry handles this. So the industry has framed private listings as a marketing strategy. Compass is saying it's a seller choice. It's a luxury tactic. It's an agent tool. We can test days on market without actually having days on market. But once you create systems where certain buyers have access and certain buyers don't, you're creating conditions that will definitely, by the nature of them, expose us to fair housing. Because the whole point of a public listing service is that you're giving your sellers the maximum reach, and you're giving buyers who may not be associated with an agent yet the opportunity to view inventory regardless of their race, income, whatever, gender, status, family status, sexual orientation, whatever. There's no discrimination. It's open. Buyers can see it. So if you gatekeep that access on a broad scale, then how do we know that somebody who, should otherwise see a listing wouldn't be forced into an agency relationship that they don't actually want just to get access, or, that they could be discriminated against in certain places where maybe there's gatekeepers. Like in LA, I don't see racism very much. I don't think much at all. We had one time where one seller who was Persian told our agent she only wanted Persian. She didn't want any Persian buyers or agents to come through the property, which we said we can't discriminate on your behalf, and lost the listing as a result. That's the only time that I've ever actually seen any seller not just see the color green. But I realized that there could be places in America where, if there's one dominant ethnic culture in one area, that they're like, we don't want neighbors of a different persuasion, so we're going to keep these listings off the MLS so we can pick and choose who sees them. I could totally see that happening in areas that are dominated. And I'm not talking about just white people. I'm talking about any area where there's a dominant ethnic class and they're like, we own the agencies, we own the houses, and we want to make sure that nobody else moves in here. It's like recreating, things that were solved by the civil rights era housing policies in real time. Why would we do that? She also says it damages how people perceive real estate professionals because the consumer hears private listing and what they hear is, so it's not on the open market, who gets to see it? I agree. I think this could really open things up to more lawsuits if it becomes the standard. If it still remains, and this whole entire problem was created by clear cooperation. We all know that. Even the people who are like, I know Victor Lund loves the industry so much and, believes in it. I feel like there's a lot of changes that need to happen to address the real concerns of operators, like me. But I think that it's going to just be fuel for another huge, unnecessary industry-wide class action lawsuit. So I'm with her. I think that if clear cooperation would just disappear, private listings would have less sex appeal. And at the end of the day, everyone would see the reality that maybe delayed entry makes sense. Like if a seller's like, just pre-market it a little and then we'll go live, as long as everyone in the MLS can see that off-market listing. Oh, one other thing. If we do have a nationwide MLS, I do think that would give us so much leverage if we were trying to, as an industry, sort of like hedge against Zillow becoming a policymaker. Because if there was a nationwide MLS that declared itself a nationwide MLS, that home buyers and sellers would look there possibly more frequently than a for-profit brokerage-based search portal like Zillow. So I think there's like industry power and leverage in there that, again, NAR has really let us all down in advocating. So I can see the powerful possibilities that are there. Anyway, that's just my editorial take.
Relationships matter in real estate. If you're watching this, you already know that. That's why I send my clients to Matthew Fine from Blueprint Home Loans. He is super likable. He's one of us. He is hip to what's going on in the real estate market. And honestly, he's creative. He cares about the American dream, and he helps our clients with creative solutions to getting their loan accomplished and getting them into those houses. I love that when you can count on somebody and when you're sending them to your client that they're not going to let them down. So if you're looking for a new lender partner and you're frustrated by the ones you've been referring your clients to, give Matthew Fine a call. He is on Instagram at MortgageMatt with 3 T's. I'll also put his contact information in the show notes. Now back to the show.
Okay, let's get back to it. So I recently saw a post on an Instagram account I follow, which I will share with you. And it reminded me that the One Big Beautiful Bill's real estate, new rules are coming into effect 2026. And a lot of people don't even know what they are. So even I am still trying to understand exactly how these things will be implemented, but I thought it would be useful to at least start the conversation here on the Clean Close. So first things first, one of the highlights is double depreciation, which is not a formal IRS term, but it's investor slang. And so here's basically how that plays out. When you buy a rental property, you normally depreciate the building over a period of time. So your tax write-off is slow. But if you do a cost segregation study, which your IRS preparer understands, and I've done this before, you can actually break the building into parts and depreciate the systems that are inside the building, like appliances, flooring, fixtures, landscaping, and those things have a shorter depreciation schedule. So if bonus depreciation is available, you can write off a huge portion of these shorter life items in year one. And if Section 179 is expanded, that's another tool that investors can use to expense certain qualifying items immediately. So there are 2 different tools in the Big Beautiful Bill that accelerate write-offs for investors. And the effect is you can get a bigger tax deduction in year 1, which improves your cash flow, and that's why investors care. So it makes buying investment properties a little bit more exciting, a little bit more beneficial for those of us who own rental properties or are considering buying a rental property. It definitely incentivizes that. So this is a incentive aimed at manufacturing companies. So the bill incentivizes manufacturers owning real estate here back in America. So hopefully that's to bring some more manufacturing, to the hometowns. I'm from Pennsylvania, and I can tell you that the effect of the multinational corporations moving manufacturing out has really impacted the local economies. So anything is helpful. Okay, there's a business interest expense limitation. So this rule limits interest deductions based on adjusted taxable income. It allows depreciation and amortization to be added back. I'm reading this, okay? Increasing the amount of deductible interest, especially for those who don't elect real property, trade, or business status. Okay, so it says, while most real estate professionals use that election to avoid these limitations, this change is favorable for those who don't. So business interest expense limitation applies to all business interests, regardless of whether you expense it or capitalize it. That's a little bit out of my depth. I don't totally understand that, but if it seems like it could apply to you, then I think you should ask your accountant about that or your tax preparer. Okay, then the opportunity zones. So there's like opportunity zones 2.0. So opportunity zones were first introduced in the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act of 2017. The original program was set to expire at the end of 2026, and all deferred gains were supposed to be recognized at that time. So this extends that, bringing new opportunities for opportunity zones. So in Los Angeles, there are definitely a lot of properties that fall into that opportunity zone range. So it's a 5-year rolling deferral period. When you invest cash into a qualified opportunity zone fund under the new rules, you can defer the gain for 5 years. So that is huge. And then after that 5-year period, if it's not extended again, it would be included back in taxable income. So it defers it, but it's not like it erases it completely, but it could help with how you structure deals or cash flow. And there's one more thing. In addition to getting a gain deferral, you do get a reduction in gain recognition, I'm reading, if you hold the investment for the 5-year period. So under the new rules, the gain reduction is 10% provided the investment is held through the 5-year deferral period. So still an incentive, a reduction from 15 to 10, but hey, opportunity zones, it's been extended. So it's certainly something that could still provide profit with a deferred gain. Another piece on opportunity zones, if you hold your investment for at least 10 years, the appreciation on that investment becomes tax-free. Hey, for real estate professionals, this can make opportunity zone projects attractive for long-term development strategies. So yeah, that actually is really going to affect developers, I think. But it says the original deferred gain will always be included back in the taxable income. So there's an opportunity zone map, which I'm sure you can find online. And then governors in each state will designate new opportunity zones, which will then be finalized by the Treasury. So I don't know if that's happened yet. Another key thing that was in the One Big Beautiful Bill is the SALT deduction, which is state and local tax. So that was under the 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. That was capped at 10 grand, which anybody who's in California or New York knows. This is like a drop in the bucket for what your property taxes are. So the Big Beautiful Bill increased the cap to $40,000 plus a 1% annual increase for tax years 2025 through 2029. Now, it does have a phase out for high income earners before it goes back to $10,000 in 2030. Hopefully they will change that because due to inflation, I'm sure $10,000 will be $1,000 by 2030. But anyway, it definitely will be some relief for people in the state of California, New York, and any place that has super high property taxes, Florida, and that kind of thing. So another thing that's in here is the pass-through deduction. Now, this is one that, again, is a little bit complicated, but basically it is applying in 2026. There will be a potential reduction of taxable income on qualified business profits. So what they call pass-through profits. This affects S corps, LLCs, sole props, which includes real estate agents and brokers. So you should definitely talk to your accountant about that. Another thing to be on the lookout for is the Trump account, which is basically a retirement account that is part of the One Big Beautiful Bill. You can go to trumpaccounts.gov. If you have a child who's under the age of 18 during the year in which you open the account, your child can qualify. So there'll be $1,000 contributed into this account from the U.S. Treasury Department. And it's fully in your child's name, and parents open these on behalf of their children. There are no contributions necessary, but you can deposit up to $5,000 a year to contribute to growth. So it says it will be launching July 5, 2026. So there is that. Yeah, how exciting. So that's another thing that was in the One Big Beautiful Bill that we should all make note of. And finally, if you are a developer of low-income housing units, there is a tax credit called an LIHTC, which expands credits and incentives in 2026 for those builders who are building low-income housing. So that could stimulate some development in places that need it, and that's not a bad thing. I'm never mad if they make incentives that benefit humans in our country. I recently received a phone call from the founder of Atlas, who recently launched a new AI tool that I think could be really cool. We tested it out here in the podcast studios, and I'm going to include a snippet of how that went. It's called Atlas X, and it is an AI calling assistant, so like cold calling, but it also is an AI receptionist. Yeah. And you know what? I think the people may like this. So here's how it went. All right, let's call it Courtney's West Adams Call Campaign. Okay, save and continue. Select a voice. We get to select a voice, guys. Okay, so here's Elliot.
Thank you for calling ACME Inc. There is nobody available to take your call right now.
Here's Kylie.
Thank you for calling ACME Inc. There is nobody available to take your call right now. Please press 1 to leave a message or...
Thank you for calling ACME Inc. There is nobody available.
We're not ACME Inc. Did it make that up? Is that their default thing? We're ACME Real Estate. Why is it saying that? ACME Inc. Or it's just a sample. They just used us as a sample. Ha. Now, it gives you an option to choose the language. It gives you an option to choose follow-up actions. So send follow-up SMS message to schedule a call, send follow-up email, enable call forwarding. Okay, here it's ringing. It comes from a Bristol, Pennsylvania phone number. I'm going to put it on speaker. Hello?
Hello, this is Alex. I work with Courtney Poulos at ACME Real Estate. May I ask if you currently have a house you might be interested in selling or leasing?
I do.
That's great. Andrew Jarvis, are you considering selling, leasing, or possibly open to both?
Probably selling.
That's wonderful to hear. Would you mind sharing a bit about your property?
Sure.
Alternatively, I can arrange a call with Courtney for a more detailed discussion.
I'd like to speak with Courtney.
When would be a convenient time for you to speak with a member of Courtney's team? Could you provide a range of dates and times that suit your schedule?
Sure. How about tomorrow at 11 a.m.?
Thank you, Andrew. That works perfectly. Could you also share your preferred contact number?
555. 323-555-1212.
Thank you for that, Andrew. So your preferred contact number is 555-323-555-1212. Now, could you please confirm the address of the property?
123 Main Street, Los Angeles, California, 90041.
Thank you, Andrew. So the address is 123 Main Street, Los Angeles, California, 90041. I'll arrange for Courtney to contact you tomorrow at 11 a.m. You'll receive a text message with the details shortly. Have a wonderful day.
Thanks. You too. Wow. That's pretty crazy. That is pretty crazy. One thing I don't love is that you can hear, like, it sounds like he's in a call center. And every time I get a call where it sounds like somebody's in a call center, I know they're trying to sell me something and I just hang up the phone, okay? Feedback from the peanut gallery, okay? The producer says the first one was good. I agree. I didn't like the Hope voice as much as I liked the Elliot voice. Both of them had the sound of a call center in the background. So in terms of my review, I'm going to tell Nima too, you got to get rid of that sound. It just sounds too much like spam phone calls that we get all day long. I did set the setting to send a follow-up text, SMS text message after the call, which it did. And so all we need to do here to choose the campaign recipients is upload a CSV. So if you have a title company that you work with that has phone numbers of homeowners in the area, you can literally just upload that, save it, and let this robot get to work. I'm, pretty impressed, I gotta say, and I love that I would have the control. One of the things about hiring a company to do this is that I don't ever know if the calls actually happened. I can't listen in on the calls. Here, I feel like I have control over the voice. I have control over what it says. And overall, Atlas, if you can get that noise gone, you can consider me in. I'm willing to give this a try. If you have any tech tools that you're using that you think are cool and you think I would like, and you think the audience would like, please drop them in here or send me a DM. You can follow me on Instagram at The Clean Close, that's CLOSE. And you can also send me an email, Courtney at acme-re.com.
In a little behind the scenes moment here, we've got our producer, Andrew Jarvis, and he's got some opinions on this robot call. He's like the peanut gallery. You're my consumer. What did you think?
I'll tell you what I think about it. So initially, I was really impressed with Elliot. As someone who has grown up with robotic calls, the first thing in my mind is get me a real person or I'm gone. I want to hang up. But I see two sides of it. That's some people might just figure it out and they're just gone. But there might be a whole group of people that are willing to listen and move forward with AI improving robotic calls and actually offer some value. I am not a robotic caller person. I don't like that stuff. I was super impressed with Elliot, his delivery. He even had a uptick to his voice that was okay, you're kind of throwing me off because this sounds real.
Yeah.
And
he kind of paused a little bit.
Yeah, and so maybe the call center sound in the back, that could maybe be changed to nothing, or something that just there's some random sounds that are more realistic. But overall, super impressed. I think this is actually going to give people like me willing to have the chance to hear out a robotic, even if I find out that it's not a real person, the quality was there. And it's hey, if it gets me connected to Courtney, the whole goal of this thing, then yeah. And if it's she's controlling it, then I actually can trust it more. It's not some cold call from someone trying to scam me. It's she's a legitimate business. I can look up Courtney online super easy and verify. So I liked it. I thought it was cool.
So if anything Andrew likes, I'm willing to give a try. So I'm going to test it out. I know a lot of people are afraid about robocalling, but maybe because this is more responsive, it could work. Not sure. If you test it out, let me know how it goes. I have a promo code, which I'll put in the show notes. And we can take this little AI ride together. If you love what we're doing here, please make sure to follow, subscribe. The Clean Close is a labor of love, trying to bring news headlines to very, very busy real estate agents and add a little editorial so we can remember what it is we are all doing here. Sometimes when I read news headlines or I see influencers, they're 1-minute videos on Instagram and there's not enough context. So this is the space for the context. Do you love the context? I love the context. The context is everything. In closing, I want to say thank you to the people who have partnered and supported the Clean Close, including Wagon Wash and our partner Matthew Fine, Blueprint Home Loans. We always include anyone who wants to add their voice to the conversation. So if you're interested in being a guest on the show and you feel like you have something to say, I would love to have you on. Please DM me or email me, Courtney@acme-re.com. So in this moment, I feel like we are having this energetic shift in our industry, and we have to pay attention to the news headlines because things are moving so freaking fast. Just in my own world, it is it's very obvious that agents are becoming more independent of brokerages, and as an industry, a lot of agents are rising up against the established bureaucracy. And if given a choice to leave NAR, I think if they could have access to the forms, a lot of agents would. So be prepared. 2026 feels like a year of change. So I'm not sure cosmically what is shifting, but I do know this. Real estate is going to look very different in the next few years. And I would encourage all of you, whether through this show or others, to make sure that you spend some time on the business of your business, follow the headlines, and see what direction our industry is pointed in if you want to remain relevant as we go through these major changes. Thank you so much for joining me on The Clean Close. I hope you have a great day. See you next time. Bye.